Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Shauna. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining us, and this is my YouTube channel, or my booktube channel. Today's video, I wanted to do a 3-month wrap-up, 3-ish month wrap-up. I have not been good about doing monthly wrap-ups, so I just wanted to compile them all into one and just throw them right at you guys, and then hopefully I can start doing monthly wrap-ups here shortly, so once I've gotten you all caught up. So let's just jump right into it because we've got a lot of books to cover. So the first few books I wanted to talk about, it's actually a series. So I read the first 2 in this series, and I kind of talked about them in another video, but I finished out the series, and that is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard. So the ones that I read in the past 3 months were King's Cage, Broken Throne, and War Storm. And one of those, I don't remember which one, was like a novella, it had several novellas inside of it. So it was like short story collections, basically wrapped up into here. Short stories having to do with the characters, and actually some that you never meet in the main story. So I wanted to read it because it was part of the series, so I read that there. If you want to know what it's about, because we have so many books to go through, I'm not going to sit here and say what they were about. If you're interested at all, I'll link that other video down below where I actually talk about the first book or first 2 books in the series. And you can kind of make your judgments from there. I'll give my overall thoughts on it. I thought it was a good series. Could have used a little bit of work. There were not many characters that I kind of cared for or was rooting for throughout this series. I hate to say it, but I thought the world was really cool. I think that's kind of what kept me coming back to this series and why I wanted to finish it out and not just give up on it. But I will say that it was not one of my favorite series, but it was definitely good. So if you are interested in it at all, definitely go check it out. Like I said, check out my other video where I talk about what this book is actually about. So this is a very long title, so I'm actually gonna read this to you. But the next book I read was actually a nonfiction book, and it's titled Quit Like a Woman, The Radical Choice to Not Drink in a Culture Obsessed with Alcohol by Whitaker. I have thoughts and feelings about this book. I picked this book up based off of another booktuber that I follow. She was reading it at the time. She was talking about how she felt that she was drinking a lot, just kind of not obsessively so much every day, but it was enough to where she kind of recognized it and wanted to cut back, and had talked about her time in college, and that's just the way that college is. This is the culture that's surrounding college and college kids. And I just found the whole thing fascinating because it made me reflect on my drinking habits and what I do every day or every other day, or and I don't binge drink, but I mean, I've done it in the past, in college and everything. You go to parties and all that stuff. So I just found the topic really fascinating, and I wanted to give it a try. So I loved this book. The way Whitaker writes this book, obviously the title kind of speaks for itself as to what it's about, but basically Holly herself wrote this book because she was an alcoholic. She had a very major problem with it and was told time and time again to go to AA. And after having dealt with that and finding her, dealing with her own struggles and finding a way for herself to quit drinking altogether, she's now created this book. And it's not, I will go in saying this, it is not a book to read just to, it's not a step-by-step guide on how to quit drinking. That's not what this is. This is about her journey and her experiences dealing with AA and the concept and the foundation and the founding of AA, which I found really, really fascinating because I did not know a lot about AA, except, there are the steps that you have to go through, and you go to the meetings and you have the support group and you're trying to make your way through all the steps. So that's the basics of what I knew of AA. And come to find out, it's very much based in religion, which was fascinating to me because, it's definitely helped a lot of people, and it's not something I want to say that AA is bad, because it's not. It has helped so many people, but it's definitely not for everyone. It is not the end all be all. You have to go to AA in order to become sober. I'm gonna go on a tangent about this because I just found the book so fascinating and so cool and so eye-opening on how alcohol is treated and pushed on women especially, and it took a very gendered approach to drinking, just a very feminist approach to stop drinking. And it's not something that, you know, she's explicitly said like, you need to stop drinking. I mean, there probably were a couple of times. It's been a couple of months since I read this book, so I don't remember all the bits and pieces. I do remember her talking about alcohol isn't good for you, so why do we drink it? What is it that brings us to this beverage and to this drug, in a sense, all the time to release our feelings? So it's just, it was a very interesting read, and it opened my eyes to the way that we as a society and women view alcohol, the way that men and society itself can use it as a, I can't even describe it, as like a factor in like using a power over women is. And I'll just end it there because, like I said, I could go on a tangent with this book. It was so good. It was so eye-opening. But I will say, I still drink. I don't binge drink anymore. I haven't done that in years. But it's still very eye-opening to how we view it and how we accept it as a society. When it is kind of crazy, when you really think about it, that alcohol is something we just kind of accept. But for a long time there, marijuana wasn't. Just makes you think, Okay, and the next book I read was Hunted by PC and Kristen Cast. This was, can't even tell you, fifth in the House of Night series. I don't know. I don't remember it. I read it because I thought Natasha and I were gonna keep going. I don't think we are. I'm gonna just leave it at that. It was fine. I'm not continuing the series. It's just, I'm letting it go. This next book I read is actually a poetry collection because I've really been getting into poetry the past year or two, I would say. And it is Homebody by Rupi Kaur. Loved it. I absolutely loved it. I love her writing style. I love her poems. They all hit home for me, and I saved so many poems from this because it spoke to my soul. She just has a way of writing her poetry, and I am not a poetry person at all. And I say that in the sense of, I don't know what good poetry is and what bad poetry is. I only know the poetry that speaks to me and that said something to me and made me feel all the things. And every collection I've read of Rupi Kaur's does that. It's great. It's so fantastic. She has a way of writing about women's bodies and growing up and coming into ourselves and not loving ourselves, but trying to find the confidence to do that. And she's just fabulous with it. So if you haven't already read this, you should. You really should. I highly recommend it. So this next one is also a poetry collection, and it's called She's Strong But She's Tired by R.H. Sin. So this one, obviously very thick poetry collection. There's a lot in here, but you've got like some micro poems and other things that are kind of bigger. This one was okay. I don't have much to say about this one because, again, I'm not a poetry aficionado. I don't know what good poetry is or what bad poetry is, but this one didn't speak to me like Rupi Kaur's does. And I think it's only because the poetry in this collection, I thought it was gonna be more of, you know, she's strong but she's tired, and I, in my mind, was thinking a completely different thing from what it was. But it's basically about going through breakups and divorces and losing somebody that you love in that way, in a relationship way, not even in a familial or a friendship kind of way. And it didn't resonate with me because I'm not at that stage in my life. You know, I am in a very loving, committed relationship, about to get married later this year, and it If I was in a very different place in my life, this would probably be a different conversation. But as of right now, when I read this, didn't really do much for me, but I'm sure it will do a lot for somebody else. So this next book, don't know why, I just decided to pick this up from my shelf for some reason or another. I just was like, you know what, let's read this book randomly. And it's called Slender Man, and it's actually by Anonymous. It has no author name, which makes it creepy. I mean, obviously, like, it's a very creepy cover, it's a creepy man, it's a very creepy book. So this book is actually told through like text messages and news articles and diary entries, police recordings. Yeah, so these are like journal entries and stuff. So this one was good mostly because I actually had never heard of Slender Man before. Apparently, what is it? They call it a creepypasta. I didn't know what that was. I had to look it up. I had no idea. But apparently Slender Man was a like fictional character that was created online on like Tumblr or something years ago. And people took off with it and started creating, you know, art for it and, you know, writing these stories for him and all this other stuff. So we follow a couple of different people, but basically a girl goes missing and they're trying to figure out where she's gone, if she's died. Some people are saying it's Slender Man. And there's a boy that we mostly follow through this book that is writing in his journal entries and being interviewed by the police because he was a really good friend of hers. And he's having these crazy dreams and he thinks he's seeing Slender Man. So he feels that it's up to him to find out what's happened to her. So like I said, it makes it all the more creepy at the fact that there's not even an author's name attached to this. So they're making it seem as if this kid from online actually like wrote this stuff and somebody compiled it together and published it into a book. So as if this is a true story. It's not. I checked because I had to do my research because it was creepy. But it was a nice little kind of creepy read in the middle of summer. You know, I miss Halloween, and October is my favorite, absolute favorite. So it was nice to kind of just jump into like a little creepy horror thing in the middle of the year, because why not? All right, the next one I read, I'm gonna just talk about all three because I finished the series, yes. And it is Caraval by Stephanie Garber. This was such a good series, y'all. Like, I was sleeping on this. I kept putting this off, and I don't know why, but it was so good. I even got Tony to read it. Yeah, that's huge. He listened to the audiobook, and he loved it. And he wants to continue, but the second audiobook is not out, or it wasn't on script, so we couldn't listen to it. I went ahead and got the second and third book from my library and read them that way. He wants to listen to the audiobook. But so if you're not familiar, this story follows two sisters. We're following one perspective in this book, and it's with Scarlett, and she has desperately always wanted to attend the show called Caraval, and it's basically a carnival magic kind of show that you participate in. So people who come, you can come to see the show or you can come to play the game. So the game is always finding something. You're given clues and you have to figure out where this item is, and whoever finds the item wins the prize. Well, in this book, you follow Scarlett mostly, and she has been writing to Legend, who is the creator of Caraval, and nobody knows his identity. He just goes by Legend. And she has been writing to him since she was a little girl, always asking to be invited to see the show, or for the show to come to her island, because she lives on a very secluded island. This is a very fantasy world. It's not set in our world. So she's writing. She never hears back from him. And then finally, this is the year she gets three tickets to Caraval. One for her sister, and one for her fiance, who she has never met, by the way. So they all decide to go to Caraval. Not her fiance, another guy kind of hit that ticket, and all three of them go. She gets there, she gets separated from her sister at one point before the game starts, and then she starts to play the game and realizes her sister is this year's prize. So she is trying to find her sister. And she's following the clues, trying to figure it out, and she's realizing how very closely linked she is to Legend and the game itself. And there's a lot of things going on that she suspects are not part of the game. And the biggest thing about Caraval that they tell you is everything you see is fake. Don't lose yourself to the madness of thinking all of this is real. So she can't tell what's real and what's part of the game. So things are getting confusing, things get intense. It's such a good atmospheric, like, y'all, this world was so freaking cool. And then obviously we have the second and third book, and it's, so this one's Caraval, and then we have Legendary, and then we have Finale. And so this whole series was good, man. I mean, there were a lot of things that I didn't like about the two sisters here and there. I like my women badass, strong heroines, and don't get me wrong, they are. They're definitely not weak, but it still felt very girly and whiny at times, especially with Scarlett's perspective. Not so much her sister Tella. Tella is more headstrong and adventurous and courageous, but at the same time, there were a lot of things that Tella did that I was like, I'm being a little whiny right now. I need you to suck it up and continue on, which they eventually do. But I think those are my only qualms with it. Otherwise, this series was so good, and I do recommend this series to everybody because I love the world. It was so great, sucked me right in. And I loved the story. It was so good. Okay, this next book, I actually got at the airport and finished it basically on that trip. I flew through it. And it is Clara and the Sun by, I cannot pronounce this, it is a Japanese name, Kazuo Ishiguro? Ishiguro. I'm trying, I am attempting. But I don't know how I feel about this book. Like I said, I did fly through it because I was very interested to see where it was gonna go. So this is about Clara, who is an AI, basically. She's an artificial intelligent, like, best friend. So this is set in the future, and you can purchase robots, essentially, who can be best friends to your children. It's basically like the kind of concept for it. They're very intelligent beings. They have feelings, from what I could tell, but it's written very cut and dry, as if it's a robot actually thinking these things and saying these things. But they're all powered by the sun. So the sun is what, and they don't realize that really. They think the sun is like this very powerful being that, you know, they need its nutrients and stuff, but you gather that they're solar powered. So Clara actually, you know, she lives in this store at the beginning, this store where all these AIs are waiting to be purchased, basically. So she's seeing, you know, all of the AIs, her friends and everything, being purchased. And then one day a girl comes in who walks a little differently, but Clara doesn't really understand why. Come to find out, she's very sick, and she purchases Clara. Her mom purchases her to be a best friend to this young girl. And so we're following Clara as she moves in with this family and navigating and understanding what being a friend like that means and what being a human means. So it takes on, it's very unique. It takes on this very unique question, basically, of what does it mean to be human? What gives us these feelings? And it comes from a very interesting narrator, because you also learn more about this girl's illness and why she's ill and what that means for the future and all these different things. It's very intricate, and there's a lot of things I don't want to give away because it adds to the whole plot line and the whole story. So I don't want to give things away, but I will say it was very unique. I do recommend it, but I will say it's, like I said, it's very cut and dry. It's not a simple, you know, it is like kind of a philosophical book in a way, but it's from a robot's perspective. Just kind of take it with that understanding going into it, that you're gonna have to pick up on a lot of things that this robot doesn't understand, but you're given all the clues for. So yeah, overall, still interesting read, still very good, and I like that I'm branching out and trying different genres and new things. But this was like an anticipated read, I think, or it's a national bestseller, but I saw this on so many like bestseller lists that I wanted to try it out and it sounded interesting. So I picked it up at the airport and like I said, flew through it. All right, moving right along. So funny story, I actually got this book at the airport as well. And didn't realize I already had a copy at home, but it's fine. So I started this one on the trip as well, but didn't finish it then. But it's called Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaghy. And this one I loved. I thought it was so good. Mostly because I'm so fascinated by wolves and like the restoration of wolves and reintroducing them into the wild and stuff. And that's kind of what this book is a lot about. So we follow our main character who is basically a wolf preservationist. I don't know how else to describe her. She works with biologists and everything and vets, and they've gotten these wolves and they're trying to reintroduce them into Scotland because all of the wolves died out in Scotland apparently many years ago. So she's trying to reintroduce the wolves into Scotland because, didn't know this, I hope this is real, I gotta look into it, but apparently reintroducing wolves into the wild in a specific location like Scotland will actually help the environment. I had no idea because it's all the cycle of life because they've been overrun by deer and the deer are what is eating the grass and it's the wolves that keep the deer population in check and also lets the grass grow and the emissions from that like affect the world. And I don't know, it was really cool. It was a really interesting view I never knew about. But yes, this woman is reintroducing the wolves into Scotland, but of course there's a lot of pushback from the locals because, I mean, I get it, you know, reintroducing, like having wolves now in your backyard when you run a sheep farm, yeah, it might put you out of business. It's gonna hurt your business, it could hurt your children or your family, but wolves in nature are not like, I know that they are predators and they are scary and they have attacked humans. They do, that's part of their nature, they hunt. But there's a lot of good in wolves too. And that's why I was so fascinated with this book. Anyway, so she's just getting a lot of pushback from locals. And then some people start to go missing and turning up dead. And she is so afraid that they are going to blame it on the wolves when she can prove that it's not the wolves. So it's following her through that and kind of trying to navigate the community itself and while also taking care of the wolves and being safe about it too, of course. Like she doesn't just go up and like start petting these wolves, they're not pets. But at the same time, she's tracking them, she's watching them, she's monitoring them. You know, they're starting, they're having pups and litters and they're establishing their packs and everything. So it's really fascinating. It's a really cool novel and I really do recommend this to everybody. We're gonna keep trucking along. So this next book is called Into the Heartless Wood by Joanna Ruth Meyer. I picked this one up a long time ago. I've been really trying to read more of the books on my shelves. I say that and I'm a big fat liar because I have a stack of library books right here too. Either way, I was going through a phase where I wanted to read more of what I had on my shelf. And I actually picked this up a while back because I am not a writer myself, but there has been a story niggling at my mind that is very similar in premise to what this book is. So I was really fascinated and wanted to see what, like if I could compare the two of like the story that's in my head that I want to write eventually at some point to what someone has actually published. So this one is actually about these tree sirens basically who live in this haunted forest, or not really haunted, but like they overtake the forest. They have like their mother who is like the main tree woman who brings them to life. They were trees, and then she brings them to life, and so they're like tree women who are sirens, so they sing, you know, like the sirens from the ocean, and lure people into the forest to kill them. And it just sounds so cool. So they steal their souls basically once they've killed them, and feed it back to their mother. So we're following the perspective of one of the tree daughters and a boy who lives on the edge of the forest and gets drawn in and sucked into their world. So obviously there's like a little love story there too, which is super cute. Overall, it took me a while to read this one. And I feel a big part of that was because I was listening partly to the audiobook and then also reading it at the same time. So I would listen to a little bit in my car and then read some when I got home or at work. And the person who did the audiobook for the boy's voice really got on my nerves. So I feel like that took a lot away from the book for me. It made me not really want to read it as much. So I feel like I'm a little biased when it comes to that, but overall, concept is cool. Not sure if I would really recommend it to people. It wasn't great. Again, it could just be because the person I listened to on the audiobook was just terrible, but the story itself was really interesting. Like I said, the concept is phenomenal. It's so cool. And the scenery of it was really cool, and I loved the world that she built. The characters themselves, I didn't really like the boy, but again, could have been the audiobook, but loved the tree siren daughter. She was cool, and I loved reading through her perspective. That was really awesome. So if you're interested in all in that, I would say give it a shot, but it was one that was definitely not probably on one of my favorites. These next two are two poetry collections. They're kind of in the same box, essentially. I read the first two in it. Very gorgeous covers, if you couldn't already tell. But they're called, the first one is called Oracle, and this one, the second one, is called Departure. And there's two more that came in like this collection all together. So I read these first two, and they were good. I will say, I don't remember much from them. It could have been because I read them a little bit ago, but I remembered enjoying them, you know, more so than the other poetry collection that I read in the past few months. So I did enjoy these, but I still feel that Rupi Kaur is kind of more memorable for me. But I plan on reading the other two in this whole like box collection that I have, which is gorgeous, by the way. I mean, look at that. That's so pretty. It's so nice. So that was why I picked it up to begin with, because it was just so nice, and there were 4 books inside, so why not? All right, this next book that I read, I actually talked about in a previous video, called Book of Night by Holly Black. And this one I kind of already talked about, so again, because I'm trying to keep this video somewhat short and sweet, I would say check out that other video to hear my thoughts on it. I do kind of end up reviewing it a little bit. I will say overall, I really enjoyed this book. I loved it. I thought the concept was so freaking cool, and I loved the main character. A lot of people, I think, I've read the reviews, felt that she was bland, that the story kind of lacked anything, it moved too slow, but it was a thriller. It's like an urban fantasy thriller, and I loved it. I thought it was cool, and it sounds like it's gonna be a series, and I'm gonna read the second book. It sounds cool, and I loved the characters in it. I thought the main girl was badass, and I loved her story arc through this, and the story itself was just so cool. But again, check out my other video where I talk about this book. It's in my book haul video when I got this book, and I actually had ended up finishing it, so that's why I talk about it in that video. So go check that one out. We made it to the final book that I've read in the past 3 months, and this one, I love ending on this one. So it's called The Stationery Shop by Marjan Kamali. Oh, this one just hit me in all my feels. It was so good. So again, I talk about this one in my book haul video. I hadn't read it when I filmed that video, but I talk about what it's about. But to give you a rundown of basically what it is, It's set in 1953 in Tehran, which is in Iran, and there was a lot of political upheaval happening at that time. They were trying to be run by a democracy, but a lot of people were against it, and it was very heated at this time in this small town, or the small village of Iran. And we follow two characters, a girl who is about 16 or 17 and a boy about that same age. And they both are visiting the stationery shop to kind of get away from all the political stuff going on. It's a reprieve for them from having to talk about that or having to deal with protesters. And they both love to read. And in the stationery shop, they have books and poetry collections and stationery itself, obviously in the title, and then quills and ink pots and all this kind of stuff. And it's just where they go to relax, essentially. And the owner of the shop ends up kind of matchmaking them, like his two favorite customers in a way. He kind of did it in a roundabout way, but it ends up happening. They meet, they fall in love, they get engaged. They are going through so much with their families and all of the mess that's happening in Iran at this time that it gets to this point where they're writing letters to each other, and the boy just says, screw it all, let's meet at this fountain at this time on this day. Let's just go to the office of marriage license and stuff, and just let's get married. Let's screw it all, let's not have a wedding, let's just go get married. And she agrees and says that she'll meet him there. She gets there, there's a political rally happening at that time, and there's a lot of chaos that ensues, but at the end of the day, he never showed up. She waited there for hours and waited and waited and waited. He never came. Fast forward 60 years later, and they, you know, have obviously both moved on with their lives, gotten married, had children, all of that kind of stuff. She's even moved to America and is living her life. And they're now in America, and she happens to cross paths with him. And she now finally gets to ask him, what happened? Why did you never show up? Why did you leave me? I loved you so fiercely. How could you do this? And it's just, it's a tearjerker. But it was something I so needed to, I know it doesn't sound like it with all the books I listed that I've read in the past 3 months, but I have been in a bit of a reading slump. I haven't found anything that's really sparked a lot of joy for me. And it's been frustrating because it's been so hard to find books that really speak to me, that give me that passion again for reading that I know that I have. And this book just did it. It killed me, but it was so beautifully written. Like the way that the author writes is just so smooth and flows and caresses you in like a nice little warm hug, but it's so heart-wrenching too. I mean, of course, like the things that they're talking about is so hard. Like you want everybody to have these happy endings, and it just doesn't happen sometimes. And this book just handled it so beautifully, and I got to learn more about different cultures and what was going on at the time. And it just go read it, y'all. Just go read it because it's such a lovely read. It's so good, and I cannot recommend it enough. All right, so that finishes out this video. That is my basically 3-month wrap up of everything I read in the last 3 months. Like I said, I'm hoping to do more monthly wrap-ups so the videos aren't as long, but I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. It really does help out my channel. Hit the subscribe button if you want to stick around. I would love it if you did. I love when people come back and watch my videos. Comment down below if you've read any of these books, what you think of them, whether you like or hate them. I don't care. Tell me. I want to know because I love hearing other people's opinions and discussing with them why they love books or why they don't. So if you've read any of them, comment down below. Follow me on Instagram. I talk over there all the time too. But thanks again so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in my next video soon. Bye.